Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her face against the cold metal wall of her cell and tried not to think about home. The ship around her hummed with alien sounds she could not understand. Strange clicks and hisses came from the walls. Sometimes she heard heavy footsteps in the corridors outside. 3 days ago, she had been studying rock samples on a small moon near Kepler 442. Her research ship, the Endeavour, was supposed to be safe in that quiet system. No one had ever found alien life there before. But the massive ships that appeared from nowhere changed everything. The creatures that took her called themselves the Kreth. They stood 8 feet tall and looked like giant insects wearing armor. Their bodies were covered in sharp, black plates that could cut through steel. When they moved together, they seemed to think as one mind. Sarah had watched them tear apart her ship's hull with their bare hands. Now she sat in a cell that smelled like metal and death. The walls showed scratches from previous prisoners. Some looked like claw marks. Others looked like they came from desperate hands trying to dig through solid steel. Sarah wondered what happened to the people who made those marks. The cell door opened with a loud hiss. 3 Kreth entered. Their movements perfectly matched. The one in front was bigger than the others. Scars covered his armor, and his eyes glowed red in the dim light. "Human," the leader said. His voice sounded like grinding glass. "I am Hunt Master Velthak. You will be given the honor of joining our great hunt." Sarah stood slowly. Her legs shook, but she forced herself to look directly at him. "What is a great hunt?" Velthak made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your species knows nothing of glory. The great hunt is how we prove our strength. We release prey on our hunting worlds. Then we chase them. When we catch them, we kill them. It is the way of the strong. And if I refuse, you will die here instead. But that would be wasteful. You might provide some entertainment first." The other Kreth moved closer. Sarah could smell something sharp and chemical coming from their bodies. One of them held a small device that beeped softly as it scanned her. "Interesting," it said in a higher voice. "This human is weak. No natural weapons, poor eyesight, slow reflexes. It will not last long." The third Kreth nodded. "Perhaps 30 minutes, maybe an hour if it runs well." Velthak studied Sarah like she was a broken machine. "How boring." But wait. His mandibles clicked together as he thought. "This hunt celebrates our victory over the Altarian rebels. We should make it special. Give this creature something to make the chase interesting." "You mean weapons, Huntmaster?" the scanning Kreth asked. "Yes, something simple. Nothing dangerous to us, of course, but enough to let it fight back a little. The others will enjoy watching it try." Sarah felt a cold fear in her stomach. These creatures saw her as entertainment. They thought she was so weak that giving her weapons would just make her death more amusing. The Kreth left her alone for several hours. When they returned, they brought equipment. A plasma rifle that hummed with blue energy. A pack containing food, water, and basic survival tools. Armor that looked too big for her human frame. "Put these on," Velthak commanded. "Learn to use them quickly. In 6 hours, you will be released on Zirion 7. 6 hours after that, we begin hunting." Sarah picked up the plasma rifle. It was heavier than she expected, but the design was simple enough. A trigger, a power setting dial, and a targeting scope. She had used similar weapons during her military training years ago, before she became a scientist. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Velthak tilted his head. "Because we can. Because you are weak. And we are strong. Because this is how the galaxy works. The powerful take what they want from the helpless. And you think I'm helpless? I know you are. Your ship had no real weapons. Your people hide behind metal walls instead of fighting with claws and teeth. You are prey, human. Nothing more." Sarah nodded slowly. "I understand." But inside her mind, other thoughts were forming. These aliens were strong and fast. They had sharp natural weapons and tough armor. But they were also arrogant. They thought strength meant only physical power. They had never met humans who fought with their minds instead of their bodies. The Kreth took her to a transport ship. Through the windows, she could see other vessels. Hundreds of them, all heading toward the same destination. Each ship carried hunters from different alien species. She saw the Vorthok with their metal claws and electromagnetic weapons. They could tear apart electronics with a touch and rend steel like paper. The Zephyrians flew through the air on massive wings, carrying sonic weapons that could shatter bones. All of them were apex predators from their home worlds. All of them had conquered other species through pure physical dominance, and all of them looked at her with the same expression she had seen on Velthak's face: amusement, contempt, complete certainty that she would die screaming within hours of being released. Sarah spent the journey studying the weapon they had given her. She tested its weight and balance. She memorized every button and dial. The Kreth guards laughed when they saw her practicing her aim at imaginary targets. "Look how seriously it takes this," one said to another. "As if training will help against us. Let it play with its toy," the other replied. "The prey always struggles hardest right before the end." Sarah said nothing. She kept practicing. She kept thinking. And deep in her mind, she began to plan. The transport ship shuddered as it entered the atmosphere of Zirion 7. Through the windows, Sarah could see a world designed for hunting. Thick forests, deep canyons, wide plains with nowhere to hide. Different terrains that would test every survival skill a prey species might have. When the ship landed, Velthak himself came to escort her to the release point. Other hunters gathered to watch. They wanted to see the weak human before the hunt began. "Any last words, Prey?" Velthak asked. Sarah looked around at the crowd of alien predators. Each one was bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than any creature Earth had ever produced. Each one was certain they would be feasting on human flesh before the next sunrise. "Yes," she said quietly. "Thank you for the weapons. I'll try to make good use of them." The aliens roared with laughter. Even Velthak seemed amused by her words. None of them realized they had just made the biggest mistake in the history of the Great Hunt. Sarah ran through the thick forest of Zirion 7, but not in panic. She moved with purpose, stopping every few hundred meters to study the terrain around her. The plasma rifle felt more familiar in her hands with each passing minute. Behind her, she knew the hunters were preparing. 6 hours to learn the hunting ground. 6 hours to find shelter, water, and defensible positions. Most prey species would spend that time hiding in whatever hole they could find. Sarah had different plans. She found a rocky outcropping that overlooked 3 different valleys. From here, she could see the patterns of the landscape. The forests were thick but had clear paths where previous hunts had worn down the vegetation. The streams all flowed toward a central lake. The caves in the canyon walls showed signs of use by desperate prey. Sarah pulled out the scanning device she had taken from her survival pack. It was simple alien technology, designed to find water and edible plants, but with a few adjustments to its frequency range, it could also detect metal and energy signatures. She began mapping the locations of monitoring devices and weapon caches that the hunters had placed around the preserve. The Kreth were not subtle. They had scattered supplies and surveillance equipment across the hunting ground, confident that their prey would never be smart enough to find and use these resources. They were wrong. Sarah reached the first cache after 2 hours of careful movement. It contained medical supplies, emergency food, and most importantly, ammunition for various alien weapons. She studied each item, trying to understand how they worked. Her xenobiology training helped her recognize the basic principles behind the alien technology. Everything here was designed for function over complexity. The Kreth and their allies were warriors, not engineers. They built things to be strong and simple, not clever. Sarah could work with simple. She modified the medical scanner to detect the electromagnetic frequencies that Vorthak equipment used. The food packages showed her how the aliens stored energy in portable forms. The ammunition taught her about the power cells that ran their weapons. Most important was what she found in the deepest part of the cache: technical manuals, written in multiple alien languages. The hunters had left these here for their own use, never imagining that prey might be able to read them. Sarah's years of studying alien artifacts paid off as she slowly worked through the basic symbols and diagrams. By the time her 6-hour head start was ending, Sarah had moved to a defensive position in a canyon system 10 kilometers from the release point. She had water, food for several days, and most importantly, she understood how her enemy's weapons worked. The plasma rifle had 7 different power settings. The lowest could stun a small animal. The highest could punch through 6 inches of solid rock. Sarah tested each setting on the canyon walls, learning how the energy behaved against different materials. She also discovered something the Kreth had not expected her to find. The weapon had a diagnostic mode that could interface with other alien technology. By connecting it to the scanner, she could detect energy signatures from a much greater distance. As the sun set over Zirion 7, Sarah heard the hunting horns blow in the distance. The great hunt had begun. The first hunters to find her trail were a pack of young Kreth warriors. They moved through the forest with confidence, following the obvious path she had left during her initial run from the release point. Their electromagnetic signatures showed up clearly on her modified scanner. Sarah waited in a concealed position above the trail. She had learned patience during her university years, spending days observing animal behavior without moving. The Kreth were just another species to study. When the lead warrior passed beneath her hiding spot, Sarah aimed carefully and fired once. The plasma bolt caught the Kreth in the center of his back armor. The energy discharge overloaded his nervous system, dropping him instantly. The other warriors scattered, their formation breaking apart in confusion. They had expected to chase fleeing prey, not face coordinated resistance. Sarah was already moving to her secondary position before they could locate where the shot had come from. Over the next few hours, she picked off 2 more Kreth using similar tactics. Each time, she struck once and then vanished before they could respond. Each time, she recovered more equipment and learned more about how their technology functioned. But Sarah knew this was just the beginning. The real hunters had not yet arrived. The first serious threat came from above. A Zephyrian aerial scout, soaring high over the canyon on silent wings. Its sonic weapon could shatter rocks from a kilometer away. Most prey never even saw these hunters coming. Sarah saw it clearly on her scanner. The Zephyrian's flight pattern was methodical, covering every possible hiding place in a systematic search. It would find her within minutes. She had one advantage. The Zephyrian was overconfident. It flew at medium altitude, close enough to use its weapons effectively, but high enough to feel safe from ground-based threats. It had probably never been shot at by prey before. Sarah waited until the flying hunter was directly overhead, then switched her plasma rifle to maximum power. The bolt of energy caught the Zephyrian in its left wing, severing the delicate flight membranes and sending the creature tumbling toward the ground. The alien crashed hard among the rocks, its sonic weapon skittering away across the stone. Sarah approached carefully, her rifle ready. The Zephyrian was still alive but badly injured. "Impossible," it gasped in its high, whistling voice. "Prey cannot fight back." "You keep saying that word," Sarah replied, kneeling to examine the sonic weapon. "I don't think it means what you think it means." The Zephyrian died from its injuries before it could call for help. Sarah spent the next hour studying its equipment. The sonic weapon was more complex than the plasma rifle, but the basic principles were clear enough. Sound waves focused and amplified into destructive force. She couldn't use the weapon directly. It was designed for Zephyrian physiology, but she could understand how it worked. And understanding led to possibilities. As the night deepened, Sarah heard more hunting calls in the distance. The easy prey was gone. Now the real predators were coming. Vorthak tracking specialists with their electromagnetic senses, veteran Kreth warriors who had killed hundreds of prey species, elite hunters who had never failed to bring down their targets. Sarah climbed higher into the canyon walls, carrying her growing collection of alien equipment. She found a cave system that would serve as her workshop. Here, she could modify and combine the different technologies she had acquired. The aliens thought they had given her simple tools to make the hunt more entertaining. They were about to learn that there was nothing simple about human ingenuity when survival was at stake. Sarah laid out the plasma rifle, the sonic weapon, and the various scanners and power cells she had collected. By the light of a small chemical fire, she began to work. The hunt was just beginning. But for the first time in the history of the Great Hunt, The prey was hunting back. Sarah worked through the night in her cave workshop, surrounded by alien technology that glowed with soft blue and green lights. Her hands moved with steady precision as she connected circuits and modified power flows. Years of studying xenobiology had taught her how different species solved similar problems. Now she was applying that knowledge to their own weapons. The sonic disruptor was her first success. She couldn't make the Zephyrian weapon work for her directly, but she could reverse its frequency output. Instead of focusing sound waves into destructive beams, her modified version would scatter and cancel them. Any Zephyrian trying to use sonic weapons near her position would find their attacks useless. The plasma rifle received more extensive modifications. Sarah had discovered that its power cells could be overcharged beyond their normal limits. This would give her shots with much greater range and penetration, but each power cell would only last for a few shots before burning out. She was trading sustained fire for devastating single attacks. Most importantly, she had learned to combine the scanning systems from different species. The Kreth scanners detected biological signatures. The Vorthak equipment tracked electromagnetic fields. The Zephyrian devices measured air pressure and sonic disturbances. By linking them together, Sarah could detect approaching hunters from kilometers away and identify exactly which species they belonged to. As dawn broke over Zerion 7, Sarah heard the hunting calls growing closer. The easy kills were over. Now the serious predators were taking the field. Her modified scanner array lit up with new contacts. A full Vorthak hunting pack was moving up the main canyon, following her trail with their electromagnetic senses. These were not the young warriors she had picked off during the night. These were veterans who moved with deadly purpose. Sarah smiled grimly as she activated her first surprise. Over the past few hours, she had used salvaged power cells to create a network of electromagnetic pulse generators throughout the cave system. When the Vorthak entered her kill zone, confident in their ability to sense any ambush through their natural electromagnetic detection, they walked straight into an electronic storm. The pulse generators activated in sequence, flooding the canyon with chaotic electromagnetic noise. The Vorthak stumbled blindly through their own element, their natural senses useless in the artificial chaos Sarah had created. Her first shot took down the pack leader before he could adapt to the new conditions. The modified plasma rifle punched through his armor at twice the normal range. The second shot caught another Vorthak as he tried to retreat. The third shot went wide as her power cell finally overloaded, but by then the surviving hunters were already fleeing. Sarah quickly salvaged what equipment she could from the fallen Vorthak. Their metal-rending claws were useless to her, but their electromagnetic manipulators were treasure. These devices could control and channel electrical current with incredible precision. In human hands, they became tools for even more sophisticated modifications. But Sarah knew her position was compromised. The electromagnetic pulse had been visible from orbit. Every hunter on the planet now knew exactly where she was hiding. Time to move. She packed her equipment and began a careful withdrawal deeper into the canyon system. Her scanner showed multiple hunting parties converging on her last position. Kreth ground forces, more Zephyrian aerial scouts, and something new. Heavy signatures that didn't match any of the known species. Sarah found her answer when she reached a high vantage point. Mechanical hunters. Robot warriors that the Kreth used for the most dangerous prey. Machines didn't feel fear, or pain, or doubt. They just followed their programming until their targets were dead. For most prey species, the mechanical hunters meant certain death. Robots couldn't be tricked or confused or frightened. They would pursue their target with perfect patience until they achieved their objective. But robots also had a critical weakness that biological hunters didn't share. They relied completely on their programming and sensors. And Sarah was beginning to understand how those sensors worked. She spent the next several hours preparing her response. Using the Vorthak electromagnetic manipulators, she created a sophisticated jamming system that could fool the robot's targeting sensors. The sonic disruptor was modified to generate specific frequency patterns that would interfere with their communication systems. And the plasma rifle received its most ambitious upgrade yet. By combining power cells from 3 different species, Sarah had created a weapon that could punch through the heaviest armor the Kreth possessed. It would only fire once before completely destroying itself, But that one shot would be more powerful than anything a single infantry weapon should be able to produce. The mechanical hunters found her just after noon. 3 of them, moving with perfectly coordinated steps through the canyon. Their sensors swept back and forth, analyzing every rock and shadow for signs of their target. Sarah activated her jamming system from a concealed position high above them. The robots immediately stopped moving, their sensors confused by the false signals flooding their detection systems. They began firing randomly at phantom targets, their coordination breaking down as their communication links failed. But Sarah's real trap was already in motion. While the robots struggled with their malfunctioning sensors, explosive charges she had created from plasma rifle power cells detonated throughout the canyon. The carefully shaped charges brought down tons of rock, burying 2 of the mechanical hunters completely. The third robot survived the rockfall but was damaged and isolated. Sarah approached it carefully, staying outside its remaining sensor range. She had learned from studying the alien technical manuals that these machines had a manual shutdown protocol for maintenance. Finding the access panel, she used the Vorthak electromagnetic tools to interface directly with its control systems. Within an hour, she had reprogrammed the robot to serve as her guardian instead of her hunter. It was crude work, but effective. The machine would follow basic commands and defend her position against other threats. As evening approached, Sarah's modified scanners detected a new development. The hunting parties that had been scattered across the preserve were now consolidating. All of them were moving toward her general location. The individual hunters had failed, so now they were preparing for a coordinated assault. Sarah studied the tactical situation from her new fortified position. She had weapons, equipment, and even a mechanical ally. She understood how her enemy's technology worked, and had demonstrated that she could defeat their best warriors and machines. But the numbers were overwhelming. Dozens of hunters were coming for her. Even with all her advantages, she couldn't fight them all at once. Unless she changed the rules of engagement entirely. Sarah looked at the alien equipment scattered around her position. The plasma weapons, the electromagnetic manipulators, the sonic disruptors, the salvaged robot components. Individually, they were just tools. But combined with human creativity and desperation, they could become something the hunters had never faced before. She began to plan her masterpiece. The Great Hunt was about to learn why humans had conquered their own world not through physical dominance, but through the power of their minds, and why giving weapons to a human was the most dangerous mistake any predator could make. Sarah worked through the night, building toward a confrontation that would redefine the meaning of apex predator in this galaxy. The hunters were coming for her in force, confident that numbers and coordination would finally bring down the troublesome prey. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Sarah moved through the early morning mist like a ghost. Her footsteps made no sound on the rocky ground. Her breathing was controlled and quiet. Every piece of equipment she carried had been wrapped in sound-dampening materials salvaged from fallen hunters. For the first time since the hunt began, she was not running from her enemies. She was hunting them. The Kreeth patrol never saw her coming. 6 warriors moving in perfect formation through a narrow valley, following what they thought was her trail. They moved with the confidence of apex predators who had never known fear in their own hunting grounds. Sarah watched them from above for 20 minutes, learning their patterns. The point scout moved 15 meters ahead of the main group. The leader stayed in the center, protected by his subordinates. The rear guard checked behind them every 30 seconds, always looking in the same direction. When she was ready, Sarah activated her first trap. Modified Vorthak electromagnetic pulse generators, buried along the valley floor, created a cascading power failure that disabled all their scanning equipment simultaneously. The Kreeth formation stumbled to a halt, their warriors looking around in confusion as their technological advantages vanished. The plasma shot that killed their leader came from a direction none of them were watching. Sarah had climbed completely around their position during her observation period. By the time they realized where the attack had come from, she was already moving to her next firing position. The second shot dropped the point scout. The third missed as the remaining Kreeth scattered for cover, but their panic was exactly what Sarah had planned for. In their desperate retreat, they ran directly into the killing field she had prepared. Sonic disruptors hidden among the rocks created a wall of destructive sound. Explosive traps made from overloaded power cells turned the valley floor into a maze of death. The Kreth who survived the initial assault found themselves trapped in a nightmare where every shadow might hide another attack. By the time the engagement ended, 5 of the 6 Kreth were dead. The survivor fled back toward the main hunting camp, carrying tales of an impossible battle against prey that fought like an apex predator. Sarah salvaged what equipment she could and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. She had learned something important during the fight. The aliens were not prepared for asymmetric warfare. They understood direct confrontation between powerful opponents. They had no experience with an enemy who refused to fight fair. Over the next 2 days, Sarah systematically hunted down isolated groups of predators across the preserve. She never attacked the same way twice. Sometimes she used long-range precision shots to kill hunters from kilometers away. Other times, she set elaborate traps that turned the aliens' own weapons against them. Once, she simply poisoned a water source with modified medical chemicals, letting overconfident Zephyrians dose themselves while trying to drink. Each success taught her more about her enemy's weaknesses. The Kreth were nearly unstoppable in direct combat, but they relied on their hive-mind coordination, jammed their communications, and they became confused and vulnerable. The Vorthak were masters of electromagnetic warfare, but their own sensitivity to electrical fields could be turned against them with the right equipment. The Zephyrians dominated the skies, but they needed to land eventually, and their sonic weapons had limited range in dense terrain. More importantly, Sarah was learning to think like her enemies while they struggled to understand her. She began to anticipate their tactical responses and set traps accordingly. When they tried to track her by following her energy signatures, she led them into ambush zones. When they attempted to corner her using coordinated sweeps, she had already moved to positions behind their lines. The psychological effect on the hunting parties was devastating. These were creatures who had spent their entire lives as apex predators. They had never experienced fear during a hunt. Now they moved through the preserve, looking over their shoulders, jumping at shadows, questioning every decision. Sarah's modified scanners detected the change in their behavior patterns. The hunters were becoming paranoid and exhausted. They made mistakes. They broke formation. They fired at false targets and revealed their positions unnecessarily. But Sarah knew this phase of the hunt could not last forever. Eventually, the remaining predators would either flee the preserve entirely or commit to a final, overwhelming assault. She needed to be ready for either possibility. On the 4th day, her scanners detected a massive energy signature approaching from orbit. A command ship was entering the atmosphere. Through her captured Kreth communication equipment, she intercepted fragments of their transmissions. Huntmaster Velthak himself was coming to the surface with his elite personal guard. These were not the regular hunters Sarah had been fighting. Velthak's elite were veterans of hundreds of campaigns across dozens of worlds. They had faced every type of prey the galaxy had to offer and had never failed to bring down their targets. Their equipment was the finest the Kreth Empire could provide. Their tactics were refined by generations of successful hunts. Sarah studied the intelligence she had gathered about the elite guard. 12 hunters in total, each one a champion among champions. They moved with perfect coordination and carried weapons that could level city blocks. Their armor could withstand direct hits from ship-mounted weapons. Their sensors could track targets across continents. Against any normal prey, they would be invincible. But Sarah was no longer normal prey. She had become something the Great Hunt had never faced before. A human armed with alien technology, and driven by the absolute refusal to surrender that had carried her species to dominance on Earth. She spent her remaining time preparing for the final confrontation. Every piece of equipment she had salvaged was integrated into a comprehensive weapons system. Every advantage she had gained through study and adaptation was incorporated into her battle plan. Every lesson learned from her previous encounters was applied to the tactics she would use against the ultimate hunters. Sarah chose her battlefield carefully. A deep canyon complex with multiple levels and hidden passages, where superior numbers would be less important than tactical positioning. She seeded the area with every trap and weapon system she could create. She established firing positions that would allow her to strike from unexpected angles. She prepared escape routes that would let her break contact if the battle turned against her. Most importantly, she created her final surprise. Using power cells from dozens of alien weapons, she had built a device that would overload every electronic system within a kilometer radius. It would destroy all her own equipment as well, but it would also level the playing field completely. In the resulting chaos, victory would go to whoever was most prepared to fight with primitive weapons and tactical cunning. As Velthak's command ship landed near the canyon complex, Sarah made her final preparations. She stripped down to basic armor and simple weapons. Everything else was integrated into the traps and ambush systems that would define the coming battle. The Huntmaster's voice echoed across the preserve as he broadcast his challenge. He called her an abomination that had violated the natural order. He promised her a slow and painful death as punishment for her crimes against the proper way of things. Sarah listened to his words and smiled grimly. The Huntmaster still thought this was about strength versus weakness. He still believed that natural advantages guaranteed victory. He was about to learn why humans had never met a challenge they could not overcome through preparation, adaptation, and sheer bloody-minded determination. The final hunt was about to begin. But this time, the apex predators were walking into the domain of something far more dangerous than themselves, something that had turned their own weapons against them and refused to accept the role of prey, something human. Huntmaster Velthak stood at the edge of the canyon complex and studied the terrain below. His 12 elite guards spread out behind him in perfect formation. Each warrior had survived hundreds of hunts. Each carried weapons that could tear apart armored vehicles. Together, they had never failed to bring down their prey. "Scan the area," Velthak commanded. "Find the human's hiding place." His warriors activated their sensors and began a systematic sweep of the canyon. Advanced detection equipment that could track a target's heartbeat from a kilometer away, thermal imagers that could see through solid rock, electromagnetic scanners that could detect metal weapons buried underground. All of them showed the same result. Nothing. "Huntmaster," his second-in-command reported. "The scanners detect no life signs in the canyon. The human is not here." Velthak's mandibles clicked in annoyance. "It must be here. Our orbital surveillance tracked its movements to this location. Expand the search pattern." What Velthak did not know was that Sarah was watching him from a position less than 50 meters away. Her body was wrapped in thermal blankets that masked her heat signature. Her weapons were made entirely from non-metallic materials salvaged from fallen hunters. Her heartbeat was controlled by meditation techniques she had learned during her university training. She had become invisible to every sensor the Kreth possessed. Sarah watched the elite guards move into the canyon. They advanced with textbook precision, covering each other's movements and checking every possible ambush position. These were not the overconfident hunters she had been fighting for the past week. These were professionals who took no unnecessary risks, but they were still aliens who had never faced human ingenuity. The first trap activated when the point guard stepped on a pressure plate hidden beneath loose rocks. But instead of an explosion or energy discharge, it simply released a cloud of fine powder into the air. The Kreth warrior brushed it aside, assuming it was just dust disturbed by their movement. The powder was actually a mixture Sarah had created from Zephyrian sonic weapon components. When it contacted the Kreth's exoskeleton, it began to vibrate at a frequency that interfered with their natural electromagnetic coordination systems. Within minutes, the affected warriors would lose their ability to maintain hive-mind contact with their squad. The second trap was more subtle. Tiny electromagnetic pulse generators, no bigger than coins, scattered throughout the canyon floor, each one activated with a random delay, creating brief bursts of interference that lasted only milliseconds, too short to be detected as attacks, but long enough to gradually degrade the performance of the Kreth's electronic equipment. Sarah let the guards advance deeper into the canyon before triggering her main surprises. When they were exactly where she wanted them, surrounded by high walls with limited escape routes, she activated her masterpiece. The electromagnetic pulse bomb she had built from dozens of alien power cells unleashed a wave of destruction that overloaded every electronic device in the canyon. Weapons, sensors, communication systems, even the basic life support functions in the Kreth armor, everything went dark simultaneously. In the sudden silence that followed, Sarah's voice echoed from the canyon walls. "Attention, Apex predators. Welcome to my hunting ground. Velthak roared in rage as he realized what had happened. His weapons were dead, his scanners were useless, his connection to his warriors was severed. For the first time in his life, he was fighting without technological advantages. "Show yourself, coward," he bellowed. "Face us with honor." Sarah's laughter drifted down from above. "Honor? You mean like the honor you showed all the species you've hunted to extinction? Like the honor of releasing unarmed prisoners on your killing grounds?" The first plasma bolt came from a direction none of the guards were watching. Sarah had climbed to a position impossible for creatures with Kreeth physiology, using human flexibility and endurance to reach a ledge they could not even see from their position. The shot punched through the damaged armor of a guard who was still suffering from the effects of her sonic powder trap. He fell without a sound, his body tumbling down the rocky slope. The remaining hunters scattered for cover, but Sarah had anticipated their movements. Hidden among the rocks were weapons she had positioned during her preparation time. Simple kinetic launchers that fired salvaged metal fragments with lethal force, sonic disruptors that created walls of destructive sound, explosive charges that could bring down tons of rock on command. Each position was designed to force the Kreeth into specific movement patterns that led them deeper into her killing field. Velthak watched in growing horror as his elite guards fell one by one to an enemy they could not see or predict. This human fought like no prey species they had ever encountered. It used their own tactics against them. It anticipated their responses and prepared counters in advance. It struck without warning and vanished before they could retaliate. "This is impossible," he snarled to his remaining warriors. "Prey does not hunt predators. The natural order forbids it." Another plasma shot answered him, dropping the warrior to his left. Then Sarah's voice spoke from a completely different direction. "Your natural order is dead. You made one mistake, Huntmaster. You gave weapons to a human." The final phase of the battle was brutal and desperate. With their technology dead and their numbers reduced to half, the Kreeth fought with the savagery that had made them apex predators on their home world. They used their natural weapons, razor-sharp claws and armor-piercing mandibles, to devastating effect wherever they could close to melee range. But Sarah had studied their fighting techniques from the warriors she had killed earlier. She knew their reach, their speed, their preferred attack patterns. More importantly, she had weapons they had never faced before. Blades forged from Vorthak metal-rending claws, projectile weapons that fired Kreeth razor plates with mechanical precision, sonic weapons, tuned to frequencies that could shatter their exoskeleton armor. The aliens had given her access to their technology as a cruel joke. Now that technology was being used with human creativity and desperation to turn their own strengths against them. When the last of his guards fell, Velthak found himself alone in the canyon with a human who had done the impossible. She had not just survived the Great Hunt, she had reversed it entirely. She had become the predator, while the galaxy's apex predators became her prey. Sarah emerged from her concealment, moving carefully among the bodies of the fallen hunters. She carried a weapon cobbled together from pieces of every alien species she had faced. Her armor was a patchwork of salvaged plates and human modifications. Her eyes held the cold calculation of someone who had been pushed beyond all limits, and had not only survived but conquered. "Impossible," Velthak whispered, backing against the canyon wall. "You are prey. Weak. Helpless. This cannot be happening." Sarah stopped just outside his reach and studied him with the same clinical interest he had shown her in the cell. "You want to know the difference between humans and your species? You rely on natural advantages. We rely on never giving up. You cannot defeat me," Velthak snarled, raising his claws. "I am Huntmaster of the Kreeth Empire. I have killed thousands across hundreds of worlds, and I'm a xenobiologist from Earth who got tired of being hunted." The final confrontation was brief and decisive. Velthak attacked with all the speed and fury of his species, his claws seeking to end the impossible threat that challenged everything he believed about the natural order of the galaxy. Sarah simply stepped aside and let his own momentum carry him into the trap she had prepared. Shaped charges that used his body weight to trigger their detonation, sonic disruptors that shattered his armor at the moment of maximum stress, electromagnetic pulse generators that overloaded his nervous system. When it was over, The Huntmaster of the Kreth Empire lay broken among the rocks of an alien world, defeated by prey that had refused to accept its assigned role. Sarah stood over his body and activated the communication system she had salvaged from his command ship. Her voice carried across every frequency used by the Great Hunt, reaching every hunter and every ship in the fleet. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen of Earth. Your great hunt is over. You have awakened something you were not prepared to face. Humanity knows about you now. We know about your empire, your hunting grounds, your weapons, and your weaknesses. We are coming for you." She paused, looking around at the carnage that had once been the most feared hunters in the galaxy. "You made one fatal mistake. You thought being apex predators made you safe from something higher on the food chain. You forgot that humans didn't become the dominant species on Earth through physical strength. We did it by being too stubborn to accept defeat and too clever to fight fair. You armed a human and expected entertainment. Instead, you created your own extinction." Sarah powered down the transmitter and began gathering equipment for her escape from Zirion 7. The Great Hunt was ended, but her real work was just beginning. Earth's fleets would arrive in this system within months, armed with everything she had learned about alien technology and tactics. The galaxy's apex predators had finally encountered something more dangerous than themselves, something that defined itself not by natural advantages, but by the absolute refusal to surrender in the face of impossible odds. They had encountered humanity, and humanity never forgot a lesson learned in blood. The hunt was over. Now came the reckoning.